Hello, everyone. My name is Manoj Agrawal. I'm the group editor at Banking Frontiers. Today, we are topic of lending, which is becoming a very important part of the economy, given the current crisis and pandemic and lockdown that we are all facing. I have with me five panelists here who are all stalwarts from the NBFCs and one from the IT sector. Going to talk to all of them and get their views on how the lending sector will come out of this crisis. So, welcome panelists to this session.
I'm Rashmi Mohanty. I'm the Group CFO and the acting CEO for Clicks. I've been a finance professional for almost 26 years now, been a banker, been in the financial services sector. My experience largely has been on managing balance sheets for companies, so in the treasury domain.
I'm Yogi. I'm the CEO of a fintech lending company called Kashi. We provide short-term personal loans and a bunch of other interesting products for consumers who are working professionals. We have been in this business from the last 4 years. Professionally, I'm a chartered accountant and a CPA, almost on the same lines. How Rashmi mentioned, have been a finance professional most of my life, and I've taken over a business role since the last one year now. So good to be part of this panel today.
Hi, this is Akshat Birla here. I'm the founder of Finovate Capital, and we are into supply chain financing. So anywhere where there's a transaction between a buyer and a seller, we can come in and finance that through either the supply chain products or the embedded products like buy now, pay later, and revenue-based financing. Professionally, again, sorry to bore you, but I've also been a banker in the past. Worked in Singapore and London with Credit Suisse, doing structured credit, leverage debt. Then, interestingly, ran the fintech practice at Samsung, rolling out Samsung Pay across the globe, including, and focusing predominantly on Southeast Asia and India. So those were very interesting roles before I started this in 2018.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Rachit Chawla. I'm the founder and CEO of Finway Financial Services Company. So we are aggregators who work very closely with other NBFCs like Kashi. Also, we are working together, and Clicks Capital, of course. So we are the go-to place for consumers looking for either loans, any kind of loans. We do, small ticket size to larger sizes also, and any sort of investment products. So we also own a company called AlphaBot, which is primarily into systematic trading, and it's the first time something like that has been launched in India. So we take care of that also through the Finway umbrella itself.
I'm Harish Prasad. I am from FIS, and we're glad to be associated with Banking Frontiers in this event. FIS is one of the largest technology providers for the financial services industry today. I manage solutions strategy for FIS for the Asia Pacific region, working very closely with clients across the region, but again, based out of India. I've been with FIS for a long time, and again, associated with many organizations in India over the last 15 years or so, working with them and helping them on the technology side. But again, I'm basically an engineer, but again, I have an MBA, but went on to work with the bank and then eventually came back to technology. So that's a bit about myself.
Okay, that's great. To give my background, I am also an engineer, a bachelor's and a master's degree in computer science. But I started my career doing software development. But after a couple of years, I said I can't do programming for the rest of my life. So from a software developer, I became an IT manager. From that, I became an IT consultant. From that, I became an IT journalist. From that, I became a business journalist, kind of, and also an entrepreneur at that time in 2001. So that's my brief journey. Great. So let's dive into the discussion. What we're seeing in the digital economy is that companies have become capable of handling a larger and larger number of products. And the example that comes to my mind is Amazon. And Flipkart and those kind of companies. They have such a huge number of products in their offering, which is completely unimaginable 10, 20, 30 years ago. The larger of companies would have a few hundred products or maybe 1,000 products at most, variations and this and that. In the digital age, is it better for companies to have a wider variety of products so that they can cater to a wider variety of customers, so that they can capture a wider variety of opportunities?
very honestly, at Clicks ourselves, we kind of debate sometimes in terms of being a company or an organization with one or two lines of products versus having a bit wider range of products that we can offer to a wider customer segment. And the best part, Manoj, is that if you see in today's NBFC space, you've got both models working. So you do have the 5 stars of the world. You've got the housing finance companies who are a uni-line, organizations. They only have one particular product. If they do MSME, that's all that they do. If they do housing, that's all that they do. And they've kind of mastered the way they are delivering the product, or they are reaching out to their customers, or they are using IT to automate their processes in terms of a superior customer experience, whatever it is, right? So you see, and then on the other hand, you have companies like, for example, take Clicks, for example. Clicks, we've got about 5 different products that we do. We cater to an individual with a personal loan. We cater to individuals who've got a need for a personal loan for a 2 to a 3 lakh rupees to through our partners. We are reaching out to individuals who need a small ticket 50,000 rupee, 20,000 rupee loan because they have a need at that point of time when they're purchasing something to have a pay later option. We make business loans to SMEs. We do equipment financing, healthcare equipment financing. So you've got all kinds of models working, and to my mind, the key driver for an organization to be successful is really being able to understand your customer segment, whether you are in a uniline product and you kind of specialize yourself in doing that business, or whether you're running 2 or 3 businesses and you kind of understand each and every business that you're in.
Okay, great. Some other viewpoints, other strategies that any of you has? Yes, Rachit.
Yeah, so what we have done, Manoj, we have developed a proprietary technology and we set to doing almost every product possible because we understood that the customer acquisition cost is actually going up. Nowadays, consumers are actually willing to stay at one place for all their needs because they don't like submitting their KYCs again and again. And it becomes a huge hassle. So what we have done is that we have created an ecosystem wherein once a customer comes to us, whether small or large, we have actually added a lot of products. And how it helps us is using machine learning. We know exactly from the system where to send that customer, what is the actual need, and how the same can be fulfilled. The same customers, we are seeing a trend that they take loan from us, and since they're happy, they also come back to us saying that, why don't you help us doing investments? And that's the reason we launched investment as a product also few months ago. And now we are also moving towards insurance because customers has actually clearly said that we want very ease of, doing business. We like you, we want to stay with you, but if you don't have a lot of products to offer, then we don't want multiple companies to deal with. So we would rather stick with one place who has all the KYC documentations and you fulfill everything for us. So that's the kind of trend we are, looking at. And that's exactly the reason, AI, machine learning, all these things really come very handy. I'm sure everybody in the panel are leveraging technology, but definitely post-COVID, we are seeing the need of leveraging technology even more than what it was, when the pandemic had not hit us.
Absolutely. COVID is called as the chief transformation officer in general. Yes, Akshat, you want to say something?
Yeah. So I think it's very interesting. I mean, the points that have been raised, right? But I have a sort of contrarian view, right? Because at the end of the day, what worked in the past is understanding your customer very well, going deep and sort of giving the products that they needed in that, understanding with the depth. Going forward, what is going to happen is, eventually capital will almost become commoditized. Right, where the balance is going to shift is towards organizations that can sort of manage the experience, as Rachit said, right, with the borrower in a lot more involved manner, right. So if you got a very good relationship with your customer, if you understand the customer, if you have a lot of data on that customer, you are going to be in a driving position to be able to offer them the experience they need and the financing they need, right? So, as an FI, can you compete with the likes of Googles and Amazons of the world who pride themselves in this relationship, right? I mean, once they own that relationship, can you come in and sort of offer a better relationship, right? You can definitely offer more products, but is that going to be the right approach to approach these, right? So for us also at Finovate, right, the thesis is the same, right? That how can we enable the lending partners that we've got to work and manage on these multiple programs in the supply chain with a unified platform, right? That may not only take into account all the traditional and the alternative data, but most importantly, also, pays a lot of attention to that customer experience point, right? Financing for us should not be an afterthought, right? Financing should be literally embedded in at the point of a transaction happening, right? If you can sort of put in financing at the point of the transaction by putting in products like a buy now, pay later, revenue-based financing, pay with EMIs and all of that, right? That makes financing a lot more powerful, and that's the experience that the customers will eventually want, right? And who will hold and who will be able to deliver that experience to the customer is going to be the real winner, right? I mean, and the jury is still open. Would Amazon or Google do that, or would a financial, institution be able to do that, right? Or rather, best case scenario is going to be a good partnership between the two.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one thing I'd like to add there, Manoj, is,
yes,
and again, it's very interesting. I think different organizations look at this very differently. The way I've seen it, some organizations wish to specialize. They know they're good in a product category or they're good targeting a certain set of segments. They prefer to do that. But there are also a lot of organizations which are constantly innovating, keeping their ears and eyes out to target new opportunities. And that's where, and again, this goes back to some of the points Rachit made earlier as well, because we are talking about creating and using a platform which can really horizontally expand to cover new use cases, new products, new product categories across every element, right? Across, be it your customer experience or be it your internal process or decisioning, right? Or of course your core product design, right? Being able to have something internally which really spans, which really can extend horizontally and seamlessly without you having to undertake huge amount of technology intervention development to introduce a new product, right? I think that would make organizations a lot more nimble. And I believe, and again, I come in with a very tech perspective, but I see that a lot of organizations are consciously heading in that direction, internally making investments to sort of get that kind of architecture and a stack in place so that they can really go after these opportunities in the market. That's a quick view on the tech side.
Other analogy that comes to mind is on the phone side, iPhone, very small product range, but a successful company. And on the other hand, India's most popular automobile company, Maruti, a countless number of models they have and variations and diesel and CNG and this and that. And I mean, they have something for almost everyone in the middle class. So anyway, let's hear from Yogi.
So
what do you say?
I was just about to say that, look, a one-size-fit-all policy, which a lot of organizations used to take some time back, has kind of changed, and it has become more bespoke in a manner that you need to be you need to innovate products on the fly. So there could be a need that a same consumer has, which is different in Q1 versus this need could be completely different when it's a quarter three because of the change in mentality, because of change of its requirements, and so on and so forth. Maybe in quarter one you need a personal loan, which is because you have a marriage at home, and maybe around Diwali you need a pay later kind of a scheme, right? So same consumer may have different requirements, at different parts of the year. You may have different people coming out to you with different requirements. So I think what I was alluding towards that, look, a one-size-fit-all policy is something which does not work anymore because people have become quite complicated with their choices. There could be a sale event which is happening on an e-commerce platform, and hence you need a financing at some point in time. There could be like a marriage or a contingency at home where you need a separate product to manage that. So till the time like what other co-panelists were also alluding towards, that till the time you don't fully understand your consumer segment and you're not trying to understand that what is the problem that you're trying to solve for this customer, it's very difficult to stick on to the same product. You're heading towards a dinosaur for yourself. So till the time you don't understand that fully and how you're able to solve that problem, till the time you don't manage these two things together, I think it becomes quite a risky proposition for that lending company or whatever service provider the company is trying to solve for the problem.
So I want to bring in the partnership angle. So let's say you have a smartphone. It's actually a dumb phone until you load some apps on it, right? Whether it's a Truecaller app or it's a shopping app or it's a banking app or it's a payments app, whatever it is. Until then, it's just like a feature phone. Same way, would you say that in your business, it's kind of like a dumb business until you have lots of partners who bring value into the whole business, so that you can help connect better with customers, with your suppliers, with anyone else. What kind of partners do you see helping NBFCs really grow the business forward, not just in number terms, but qualitative terms? How does the NBFC business transform itself? What kind of partners help you do that? That's it. Maybe you could answer, since your business model, I think, is completely
Yeah,
partnership.
ours is totally a collaborative approach. We don't believe in competition right now. We only believe in collaboration. It doesn't make sense to compete with your competitors at this point in time, because the market is really growing, and consolidation is happening at the ground level. So we try and collaborate with everybody. And I think I would also like to take example of what Jio has done. Jio bought the tech giants of the world, of the globe together. Why they did that? It's such a smart move, because they know that their key lies in the penetration and the reach, and they cannot compete with the technology of the likes of Facebook or Google. So might as well collaborate so that the end consumer gets the best product out of the entire partnership. Similarly, what we are doing is we have different models with different NBFCs. If somebody is looking for a short-term loan and wants to specialize in that kind of niche, we have a model wherein we give them the first right of refusal. So whenever the lead comes, we have connected our API with that NBFC. And mostly what we have seen is, because we have also integrated machine learning, the conversion rate is slowly going up as the machine is maturing. And that NBFC gets the first right of refusal, but the turnaround time for the end consumer is highly beneficial. The end consumer doesn't have to apply his brain at all. He gives us the file. Our systems run through where it needs to be logged in. We give it to our priority partners who are aggressively, wants to lend money to the end consumer. So towards the end, if that TAT is reduced, it actually becomes a win-win for all the people in the ecosystem. The customer is happy. We are happy because ultimately we make commissions out of it. And the NBFC is also happy because, as Rashmiji said, everything now is being run digitally. So everything when moved digitally, the turnaround time is the key. And again, coming back to your question of, smartphone is a dumb phone if it doesn't have application. Right now, if we don't have enough integrations of APIs and enough leveraging of technology, then we are not really utilizing it fully. So we also need something proprietary which suits our niche, our business, our customers, and our partners. So that is where we are right now.
Is it your strategy to have as many partners as possible?
So we are working on a different strategy. No, so we are working on a different strategy. So what we are doing is we are increasing number of products and customers, and then we are prioritizing the partners who wants to grow using our customer segment, because we don't like saying no to a customer. So, a lot of people at this point in time, they are, focusing on their niche, whereas we have developed and we have figured out our niche lies in holding and acquiring customers. the more customers we are able to acquire, the more data we will have. And that data becomes our niche. So we can actually decide what is the kind of product that consumer is looking at.
Akshat, if I may ask you, given your specialized business and offerings, is there any particular kind of partnership that really adds value?
No,
going forward
absolutely,
particularly?
absolutely. And it's a very interesting question, right? Because at the end of the day, when you do the whole smartphone versus app analogy, right, it makes me go back to what was laid out in the OCEN framework as well. I mean, I think people will be familiar with the Open Credit Enablement Framework, where we have almost identified two different entities, right? One is going to be the loan service provider. The other one is going to be the capital provider. And the job of the loan service provider is to specialize into certain segments, certain areas, and manage that experience with the customer, right? And the job of the capital provider is going to be sort of do have the deep expertise in terms of underwriting that clientele that comes in, right? So for me, I mean, this is going to be a very, very important phase for it to pan out, right? And as a fact of the matter is that we are more of a LSP as opposed to a capital provider, right? Which is what our forte is, because for us we work with anchor corporates and finance their supply chains, right? So I go and install my platform at an anchor corporate, could be a FMCG player, or could be a chemicals company, or could be a B2B platform itself, right? Where I go and install the platform. It enables all the ecosystem partners to have access to working capital, be it their vendors, be it their suppliers, be it their distributors or retailers for that matter, right? And
the anchor is your partner as such.
Anchor is my partner as such, right? But at the end of the day, the lender, I am the partner for the lender, right? Because I am enabling that entire access to the suppliers, vendors, distributors for the lenders that I've got on the platform. And without doing much, they're getting access to the entire ecosystem and huge borrower pools, right? And that's a great partnership for us to have, because for us, we want to sort of in the future, specialize on technology and these connects. We don't, say that, we have the deep expertise in terms of collections and underwriting, which an NBFC does, right? Or a lending partner does. So, everybody will start to have their roles, and the LSP and the capital provider model will sort of pan out much more strongly in the future, in our opinion.
Interesting. Rashmi and Yogi, any other perspectives?
I think I'll just add to what Rachit and Akshat have said, that we are seeing a huge collaboration today across banks, NBFCs, fintech companies, service providers. And when I think of partners, there are different levels at which we partner with other organizations. So you've got, for example, we've got partnerships with likes of Paisa Bazaars and India Lends, etc. So source our customers, Paytm, etc. Source our customers, and we rely on them because we know that they have a captive customer base. When I'm saying captive, in the sense that they have an easy access to a customer base, which we will never be able to get on our own, or we'll have to continue doing the brick and mortar model where you have a file coming in, through the DSA channel, etc. And this is a much faster way of acquiring a customer digitally if you can do an API integration. And then you've got partners like the bureaus where you pick up the data from. You've got partners who help you do other digital processes, for example, e-signing, e-stamping. So, companies like Legality, etc. So we are, you partner with them to make your fulfillment digital and therefore be able to offer the customer a fully digital experience. So there are in the end-to-end journey. So I think what's happening is that in this entire lending space, there is an ecosystem that has developed where each of us have found our own niche. And I think I agree with Akshat when he says that banks and NBFCs have understood that they are the ones who can underwrite and who can assess the credit well. And then there are other companies who are fulfilling the other parts of the lending process, because lending is just not about knowing whether this customer is good for credit or no. You need to get the customer in, you need to you do the fulfillment, you need to do the collection later on. You've lent the money, you want the money back, right? So I think this entire ecosystem is developing now where people are realizing their strengths. They're realizing at what part of that process do they operate efficiently, and they have the strength, and therefore building on that piece now. So yeah, partnerships to me is here to stay. You will have companies who will specialize in a part of that process, and people will come together to then be able to offer the customer a superior experience.
So all of you have described basically two kinds. One is the customer-facing enabling partnerships. Other is all the back-end kind of partnerships, whether
Which is
it's
also very
credit
important.
bureaus or legal digital signing firms and things like that. Yogi, you want to add some new perspective to all this?
Look, the way you have to think about partnerships is like the old school way of thinking of make versus buy, right? So in a short span of time with limited resources that a company generally has when they start up, you don't want to do everything by yourself because you're not an experienced, or you don't have niche on everything that the customer has to go through, right? So like how Rashmi was explaining, there are the way, although this sounds very easy that okay, there's a digital platform, you come and apply, and in few minutes or in less than few hours your loan is disbursed. So although it sounds extremely exciting over a digital format, but the amount of processes which go through from the acquiring of the customer till the processing, getting money into the bank, and later recovering is a if you put it down on a process chart, like typically how program managers do, that it would throw up like more than 200 steps there into this process, right? And every single company cannot do that by themselves. So you have to think about these partners as enablers from a consumer standpoint. And how do we make this easy for the customer is the key out here. So starting from reaching out to the customer for every step, making sure that he gets an experience which is much more superior than what the customer would have gone through. So I think these are the key elements, Manoj, at the end of the day. So other people like Rashmi, Rachit, Akshat dwell upon it. But in a classic way, if you have to look at this, is that you cannot make everything by yourself. So you need to take help of these specialist firms or these or of these people who can create that experience for you. So that from a consumer standpoint, it is few clicks, but behind those few clicks, there are a lot of micro steps which are out there, and for that every step, you may decide to do it by yourself or try to do it with a partner.
Yeah, right, correct. In fact, Rachit also started out initially saying that rather than compete, they prefer to collaborate as much as possible.
Yeah. So gone are the days when people used to ask us questions that, look, you are a fintech. Are you trying to compete with a bank? How would you compete with clicks and so on and so forth, right? So now
that changed so quickly.
Investors and other people in the community have become much more smarter about this. Now people have realized the fact that everybody is trying to complement this customer in some way or the other. What a fintech can do, a large NBFC cannot do, and what a large NBFC cannot do, a bank can do, and everybody has to coexist because the consumer pattern and their demand has changed what it was 30 years before.
Right. So I think all of you have emphasized that customer experience part a lot. Maybe we can delve into that a little deeper. So there are two kinds of customers. One can say one is someone who's already a customer. And if it's a bank, it could be a long-standing customer. If it's an NBFC, maybe the customer cycles are shorter. But someone who is not experienced your service or your variety of products or not interacted with your people face to face, if it's a new customer, how do you, in today's scenario where that history is missing, of course you have all these digital processes and front ends, but how do you deepen the customer relationship? How do you really engage the customer? Because everyone, digital, what it has done is made the front end similar for everyone, made the technical front end pretty similar. If Google or Facebook, someone establishes this is the way to do things, a lot of organizations simply copy that. Earlier it used to be MS Office. If Microsoft established Control K for doing this, Control T for doing this, everyone used to copy that. How do you create the differentiation and build the relationship with the customer? Yeah, Rashmi?
So I think for making a customer stick around with you, a couple of points have been made already, but so let's say you're getting a new customer in. So to me, you have to make sure that the customer UI is easy. You can understand what the customer wants. So you will have a customer For example, like me who hates chatbots, I'd like to speak to a person when I'm calling up a customer service department of any organization. But there will be others who would say, I would rather speak to a chatbot and just keep pressing 1, 2, 3, 4 and I'll get my data and or I'll get my information in. So I think all those nuances have to be understood very importantly to be able to make sure you can retain the customer. And I think it was Rachit who made that point earlier, that once you acquire a customer, there's a cost attached to it, and you need to make sure that you get the right value for that cost that you've paid to acquire the customer, which means that you can fulfill each and every need that the customer has. So there are two parts to it. So one is how is the customer experience when the customer logs into your organization. When I'm saying login, it could be an internet technical login or an interaction with a person in the organization. How is the customer experience for that particular customer? And the second is that you may be offering a great customer experience. You may have a very nice, beautifully designed app and a nice flashy pictures and screens on it. But if you're not being able to serve the customer, he will never come back to you. So you need to be innovative enough to then know, and I'll just take Rachit's example. I think it was Yogi who mentioned that a customer may need a short-term loan today for a marriage in the family. He may need a 4-year, 5-year loan because he wants to finance his kids' education. He may be at a shop and just wants to do a pay later kind of a product. So you should be able to offer the variety for that customer segment. So and I come back to my first point that I made, understanding your customer segment and then being able to develop the products that that customer needs in the space that you are in, and be able to offer him a good experience as he logs into your organization for that need is very important.
Of course, for financial services, they just don't need to acquire customers, but also they need to manage the risks of acquiring a customer.
As I said earlier,
every customer.
Lending is the easy part. Collection is the difficult part.
Collection is the tough. Let me come to Harish with another interesting angle of customer engagement. So in the digital era, we have seen a lot of companies and websites do a lot of A/B testing. They'll put up two options, maybe pink and green, maybe square and round, maybe high priced and low priced, and try out both the options with people visiting the website or using the app or whatever that engagement channel is. And from that, they figure out. So rather than a textbook approach or a market research approach, they use this online A/B approach for enhancing the customer engagement, whether it's a better product, a better channel, or better colors, or whatever it is.
Sure.
And of course, this works more for online shopping, for example, or for some other kind of things. But what do you think in the lending space? Do you think A/B testing is going to make a difference? Can it become, in certain product categories or certain customer categories, can it become more meaningful?
It's a very interesting question, Manoj. These kind of approaches have been used elsewhere, even in lending. I'll come to that in a bit. But again, as you say, there's a lot more probably adoption of these kind of techniques, probably more in the retail and e-commerce space, where people are constantly testing out appetite of what really works for a customer, right? But at the same time, if you were to extend this and go beyond the front end of it, really looking at what really happens from a back office or even a processing perspective for these organizations, right? I mean, these can be applied elsewhere. I have in the past seen things like Champion, Challenger, and stuff like that, which commonly is used, for example, around, right? I think we talked about collections earlier being a and there's a lot of experimentation constantly happens around other areas as well. So I think they're very applicable. May not be that it is applicable in the across the board in terms of every element of what you do for a customer. A lot more applicable to front-facing experiences and testing out what really works. The channel on the way you approach clients. But there is applicability beyond that. But again, one thing to note is it also slightly longer time to market. I mean, if you were to take the approach, while you will probably get it right, which is very important time to market is, but you tend to take a little longer because you're testing out your hypotheses, you're putting out a couple of options, see what works best, and then of course putting your money behind the right approach. So I believe it's a bit of a fine balance, but I think definitely applicable, especially when you're talking about experiences, customer-facing experiences.
So there are pros and cons, like you said.
Yeah.
May I ask NBFC panelists if you've used A/B testing and got some? How was the experience with using something like that? If not for a product selling, maybe for launching something, a new product or a new.
I can chime in here, Manoj, and see. I mean, not so much A/B testing, but I mean, at the end of the day, here listening to your consumer is paramount in anything you do, and in a lending sort of a scenario where the customer experience is very important going forward, right? I mean, this becomes very important. So much so that when we asked our customers in that times, there was a lot of prodding needed to get them on the platform to say that, right, come on the platform and discount your invoices, right? They said, one of the things that came out from them is that this is one more platform app that we have to download and do that. It's very painful. We said, what would you prefer? He said, koi bhi app use kar lo aap, WhatsApp pe kar sakte hain kya hum? We said, sure, why not? We'll enable the whole discounting on WhatsApp for you. So now we actually do discounting on WhatsApp for these guys, right? Okay. And that's a great way, right? But I still want them to come on the platform, right? Because I'm adding a lot more things on the platform which I want them to see. So again, I mean, we reiterated on the whole thing and said that how do we get them on the platform, right? So we now send teasers to them in terms of a dashboard on WhatsApp, right? I mean, a whole dashboard goes to them on a WhatsApp, but it's not interactive, right? I mean, they can only see what's going on. If they want real-time update, they have to click and come on the platform, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a way for us to sort of, again, iterate on different options. I mean, you could call it A/B testing or whatever, but it's about listening to the customers, right? And co-creating is with the customer itself is what we believe at, Finovate, right? Which is very, very important, because once you start doing that, you see the engagement levels go up significantly then.
That's an interesting example. Yes, WhatsApp is becoming, you don't have to do A and B for WhatsApp.
I mean,
WhatsApp is choice A given.
Yeah,
for 99% of the things.
You don't want to be another sort of app that they have to download, right? I mean, let's be where they are, right? I mean, it's extension of the whole embedded finance concept, right? I mean, where a transaction is happening, I mean, if transaction is happening on a different platform, we're happy to embed the financing right there and then, right? They should not need to come on a different platform to see, okay, mera invoice ho gaya, now I'll discount that invoice there.
So in a sense, that is part of CX, that you make the customer experience as easy as possible, and avoiding downloading something and installing something is part of that CX. So whatever they already have, continue using that. That brings me to my next question. Obviously this whole COVID thing has made everything more complex. I think Yogi was the one describing that you have sheets that describe the whole process, taking a full table and 20 boxes and flows and this and that. And obviously a lot of lending has evolved from much simpler days. So in this transition from simple processes, simple interfaces, simple products to everything becoming more complex, complexity doesn't increase linearly. The point I'm saying, it increases exponentially. So if something is twice as many parameters, you just don't need twice as many computers or twice any whatever resources to do it. You may need 3 or 4 times. So how are you, given the complexity that we are seeing, technology complexity, business complexity, process complexity, compliance complexity, risk complexity, how are you making this complexity manageable in a non-exponential manner? How are you doing something fundamentally so that your cost and effort and time required does not keep increasing exponentially? For example, if the amount of information to process a loan doubles, you don't want to be able to take twice as much time to process that loan. You want to be able to do it in the same time or maybe 10% more time. There's a kind of a theoretical question, perhaps an academic question, but how do you really
I can
at the source?
So should I go ahead? Can I take
Yes.
that one? So Manoj, the whole idea of coming up with your own proprietary technology and keeping CTO and coders in front of you in the office is this only. That's the reason. So we are not a tech company, but we have been sort of pushed to become a tech company because everything is proprietary. Systems are becoming complex, customer base is increasing day by day. You cannot be possibly dependent on anyone else but your CTOs and your team of coders. So for us, the only way to make it less complex and to become very cost effective is having the technology in house, not being dependent on anybody else, but doing those small tweaking from compliance, from risk, and a lot of changes keep on coming every day. It is a never ending job, but it makes it really worthwhile if you are able to do it in house. So that is our solution to making it as simple as possible, keeping it everything in house and just being too dynamic about it. So
And how do you manage with all kinds of services that whether a Google or a Microsoft or so many companies are offering so many services, many of them are actually free. Do you end up using a lot of those where applicable?
Yes, so like Yogi said, that he simply integrated with WhatsApp, and that's exactly what we are also doing. So, there are chat box on websites when you go, and there is a small icon at the bottom which say chat with me. Nowadays, customers are demanding that why do I install that software? I want WhatsApp chat direct. So we did it in less than 6 hours. We said, okay, if you like WhatsApp, we'll integrate our website only with WhatsApp. If you are okay doing a certain amount of things your way, we will put our API or we take the API of that big tech giant, because that's the reason APIs are becoming very popular. All the big tech companies, they are easily providing APIs, because they want that the consumers will increase more if they supply to partners like us.
Okay.
So and I think that's a great way to go about it, just integrating and saying and doing whatever possible to achieve your mission as well as vision.
Okay. So I know Akshat also has
Yeah.
a similar philosophy. I don't know about Rashmi and Yogi. Can you
So,
share what kind of complexity management you use?
yeah, so I think what Rachit said, that you've all become not lenders but technology companies.
Yeah.
That's true. We kind of changed our model a little, or we're in the process of still changing the model. We started doing by doing everything in house, doing the full development in house, because we wanted to actually offer a product, what we call as lending as a service, which is a full-fledged end-to-end digital lending process. And then somewhere along the line, we realized that there are certain aspects of the digital journey, which I said earlier as well, which you can really connect with partners outside and through API integration. So obviously APIs have made life very easy for each and every organization. And I'm not just talking about the financial services sector, but across the spectrum of industries that you look at. And what we've done therefore is, in that journey, we have picked up vendors where we've done API integration to pick up their platform or their services, integrated that in our journey. But that proprietary knowledge around lending as a service, which is a full-fledged end-to-end journey, is ours.
Okay.
So there are parts of it which you've picked from outside, done an API integration, and are using that to complete our customer journey. There are other aspects of lending which is totally in house. So, for example, we do spend a lot of time and have a very good team doing analytics, doing data mining, doing a lot of modeling in terms of being able to write the right scorecards to make sure that we are acquiring a customer who we want. Or, for example, picking up the customer data from different sources, bureaus, our own book, others, etc., and saying, can we help our collection team with early warning signals on a set of customers which we think are risky customers? Now, that proprietary modeling that we're doing is entirely all in-house.
Okay.
That's all done within us. So I think it all depends upon where is it that you're trying to differentiate yourself, what is the weightage of a particular process in the entire journey, and therefore what you will be outsourcing or you will be picking up as a service from the other vendors, and what you will be doing in-house. So this entire modeling in terms of customer segmentation, EWS, scorecards, that's all proprietary, done in-house.
Yeah.
Certain aspects of the journey which we are picking up through the API integration from the vendors.
So I'm getting the picture that things that are closer to business you do in-house, things that are closer to technology you outsource or partner or something.
I'll take a stab at summarizing. Sorry, go
Okay,
on.
okay, yeah, do that.
No. So
Yeah,
essentially, I mean, all what we are saying, and if I can summarize what Rachit and Rashmi are saying, right, is essentially, I mean, why reinvent the wheel? I mean, if the APIs for MCA are already there, if the APIs for banking is already there, GST is already there, everything is already there in the market. Why do you want to reinvent and have an in-house army of technology team to sort of build that out, right? Use all of that, but basically the proprietary tech that you've got, you build that in-house, right? Have that core set of teams sitting there to build the proprietary tech in-house, right? Everything else you sort of outsource, buy, partner, whatever you want to do. I mean, that's a decision that you need to take, but don't reinvent the wheel, right? I mean, there's no point in spending an energy on something which is already out there. There are already ML models out there, which you can literally just plug in the data and it will churn out basically the parameters, and you can keep testing them, back testing them with the data, right? Again, you don't need to go and create these models. You need somebody who can sort of work with these models and do that, right? So the best way to do is just, as Yogi also said, right? I mean, build versus, buy decision, and keep the, build decision to a minimum to your proprietary tech.
Yeah, just one last thought to that, and probably
Harish.
you would have thought about it. Manoj, if I may just add. Lending, I mean, I think one of you mentioned it earlier. Lending is becoming a lot more transactional in nature, right? You're talking about lending at the point of purchase. You're talking of payments you're getting pretty much a real-time credit to make a purchase, things like that. So I think it's becoming a lot more mission critical, right? It gone are the days when I think you could have run technology in a certain way and then said, I can guarantee the level of sort of service that a customer needs, because the complexity of the use case increased tremendously. And I think we just have to keep that in mind as well, which is where I think probably working with partners who can offer you a certain capability in a seamless, highly reliable, available way might still be a good decision to make in at least certain areas, but probably not areas, especially the proprietary stuff. But in certain areas where you need that reliability, the high availability, the assurance that it will always happen the first time, right? I think some of these areas, I think we believe partners can add a lot of value.
In fact, I'm reminded of a discussion I had with another banker that they were doing a project after COVID to consolidate 13 application maintenance providers, consolidating them with one provider, because they were finding it tough to manage 13 different companies for 13 different applications. So perhaps the new issue is not about build versus buy, but it is build whatever you have to build, but how many do you buy from? You go to 50 different companies for 50 different things, or do you go to 5 different companies and try to consolidate that? Perhaps I'm seeing the examples that I'm seeing. You can also check internally what's happening in your organizations. Are you expanding the number of technology partners, or are you consolidating? I guess different organizations can fundamentally have different strategies, but this is an A/B kind of question that you need to ask within. Like, do I have 50 partners, or do I have 5 or 10 or 12 partners, something like that? How much improvement do you think your organization has made? Give me a percentage figure, 5, 10, 15, 25, 35, whatever, during the COVID period to improve your business capability. Not the business, because that's not in your hand, but overall business capability in terms of speed, in terms of handling number of customers, in terms of handling variety of products, in terms of handling all the different kinds of risks. So all this digital transformation that you have done over the past 15 months, give your estimate of what you think your own estimate of what you think your improvement is. and we'll not compare with each other because it's completely different for each organization.
You take this to start with. So look, in a fast-growing environment in which all of us are a part of, putting a number out there, at least for me, would be quite difficult. But I would say that after every 12 to 18 months, the company reinvents itself pretty significantly, not in terms of only the products that it gives out, in terms of how it engages with the customer, what's the how various kind of different problems that it tries to solve with the customer, how does that happening. So from our perspective, look, we have renovated a lot of things with COVID, because COVID has changed consumer behavior. It has changed how people want to spend money, and how people want to borrow money, and where they want to spend this money that they take. So for us, the last 15 months has been really exciting. We have renovated the company in a major format with multiple products, multiple service lines, multiple consumer types which have got added. So whatever number I give will be an underestimation or an overestimation. So I'm keeping away from the number. But the last 15 months, if companies have not renovated themselves, then they might find themselves into a problem because of the sheer change, which with consumer pattern and behavior, which has shown because of COVID. So
Would you give yourself an A grade at least?
no, I'm very hypercritical about myself, so I will never give myself an A grade.
Okay, conservative.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Rachit, what do you say? Some grade or some percentage?
So again, giving yourself a percentage, it tends to get very difficult. I think it's customers who really, give you good feedback, and we look forward to those. But as far as hard work is considered, last 15 years, the entire team of Finway has worked really hard. The same can be shown, can be seen in terms of the results that we are getting. It's only been 1 month since Delhi lockdown has opened up. We are seeing significant traction. It is only because of the hard work that last 15 months my entire team has been putting. Earlier, we used to, think that if we capture North India, we'll be the happiest, But now we are planning to actually go pan India properly in a very good manner. So I think that speaks a lot about the kind of structure that we have built. So I'm very happy with the kind of growth we have seen. And again, grading would be something which is very difficult at this point in time.
Fair enough. Sounds good. But I can see the results of the hard work and the efforts that have been put in.
Yes.
Rashmi and Akshat?
I think the same thing. It's difficult to say as to how things have changed because in certain aspects, Manoj, we also had to change the underlying technology we were using for our digital journey, for example. So it's not just about building, but it's also saying the platform that we were using, was that the right platform to scale it up? And therefore, we had to do some changes around that as well. So it's difficult to put it in percentage, but I think what I mentioned earlier about, for example, our PL business, which has gone completely digital right now, is a testimony to saying that we did focus on digital transformation in a big way. And therefore, we've been able to build those kind of digital journeys with our partners. And therefore, I would say we're on the right path. But yeah, it's difficult to put a percentage or a grade. I keep telling my team, we're still not there. We still need to work a lot more to make this process really seamless and superior for the customer. So you can't have a drop. To me, every time a customer service person talks about a drop, that a customer came to our channel and the journey stopped, or he dropped off because of whatever reason, to me, that's a lost customer. You were able to get him onto your platform, and somewhere you made it so difficult for him to fill his information that the guy just decided, forget it, it's not worth it. It's a waste.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, it's a cost that is that can be avoided. So yeah.
And also, Manoj, I would like to add, the day entrepreneurs or the top management like us start giving us A grades to ourselves, I think we are becoming content, and the growth would be totally out of the picture then. So we can never be happy and we can never be content. And that's the, irony of life, or maybe the irony of our position.
That's quite true.
Rachit stopped me from giving a grade, but what I'll do is put a relevance multiplier, right? I think we became 3 or 4x more relevant, in my opinion, in the pandemic, because we've always been digital, right? What happened was the ecosystem partner around us accelerated their digital journey very quickly. Right. So, from our perspective, I mean, we've had customers come back saying, while this was not on the agenda right now, I think it makes a lot of sense in the current environment that we want to sort of ensure our supply chains are well financed. Right. So can we now put this platform, which we were looking to do maybe 6 months or a year down the line? Can we now put this and sort of ensure that, digital access to capital to our, ecosystem partners, suppliers, distributors is all there right now? That became much more relevant to in terms of the conversations we were having because of this whole digital transformation. So again, I mean, a lot of hard work has gone in, but nonetheless, I mean, what's helped is the ecosystem becoming more digitized.
Let me ask Harish. Harish, does your organization kind of come up with some kind of research, some kind of number? How much improvement you see in the the financial sector? You want to put a grade?
I mean, obviously, as a technology provider, business is a little different. I mean, apart from the financial metrics, which we anyway publish, right? I think in terms of internal, the way of working, the efficiency improvements, we have a lot happening. I mean, the last 1.5 years has been transformational, I would say. We've completely changed the way we deliver services. We've moved to deliver a lot of services remotely, not just for Indian clients, but across the region. And I think that in itself, I think is so visible, right, in terms of the change which has happened and the pivot we have made. I think I would say we've done pretty well that way. We've sailed through the current crisis and I think we're well placed to sort of work in the new world, and that's how I would say. I can't really give you a number as such, Manoj.
I'm just trying my luck. Great. So that concludes this panel discussion. So thank you all very much. See you again some other time on a similar discussion. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure speaking to all of you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.